At the very moment every camera in the East Room locked onto Donald Trump, something snapped. His composure cracked, and in a burst of fury, he pointed across the room at former President Bill Clinton and barked, "Get out!" The command wasn't rehearsed, wasn't strategic, it erupted, raw and chaotic. But Clinton didn't budge. He didn't blink. He didn't even shift his weight. He simply looked back at Trump with a stillness that stopped the entire room cold. That night, the East Room wasn't just full, it was charged. Senators, governors, senior military officers, lifelong staffers, and a thicket of reporters packed the hall. Every whisper felt amplified. Every breath carried tension. People didn't know what would happen, only that something unforgettable was about to unfold. Washington had seen drama before. Political theater, partisan battles, sharp debates, but this was different. This felt like a storm gathering in slow motion. Former President Bill Clinton, calm as a man who'd walked through fire before, waited patiently for his moment. Meanwhile, President Trump sat stiffly at a long table, surrounded by aides who pretended to look calm but whose eyes betrayed panic. Whenever Clinton and Trump shared a room, people expected sparks. But no one imagined the night would dissolve into one of the most shocking confrontations in White House history. Before anyone could settle their nerves, the program began a night advertised as a unity event. Invitations boasted about collaboration, bipartisanship, healing. One staffer murmured, "Calling this unity night is like locking fire and gasoline in the same room and hoping they start singing." At first, everything appeared fine. Dinner chatter floated lightly. Forks clicked against plates. Sighs of politeness filled the air. But beneath that glossy calm, reporters typed like their fingers were engines, glancing from Clinton to Trump every few seconds, waiting for the inevitable collision. The moment arrived when Bill Clinton stood. Some guests clapped warmly. Others hesitated, looking to Trump for cues. Clinton began speaking in that steady, unhurried cadence Americans recognized instantly, warm but sharp, gentle but commanding. He spoke of institutions that survived chaos. He spoke of leaders who knew how to swallow pride. He spoke of putting the country above ego, a message wrapped in velvet but aimed like a spear. A wave of tension rippled through the room. Trump stiffened. His fingers drummed, his jaw set. Clinton continued, voice slow, words calculated, gaze sweeping over guests like he was weighing each of them. "History won't measure us by how loudly we shout," Clinton said, "but by whether we listened, by whether we chose courage over chaos, unity over division." Heads nodded. A few lips tightened. Everyone felt the subtext. Trump's aides exchanged panicked looks. Clinton went on, his tone firmer. "This nation is bigger than any one person's pride, stronger than any one personality, and it will endure, so long as we remember that." The air thickened. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras zoomed. Then Trump stood. His chair screeched so loudly it cut through the room like a blade. His face flushed. His chest heaved. He pointed at Clinton, voice booming. "Get out." Gasps detonated around the room. Journalists lunged forward. A diplomat whispered, "Did he really say that?" Clinton didn't flinch, didn't cringe, didn't look shaken. His silence carried more weight than 1,000 speeches. Trump's aides rushed toward him, whispering frantic warnings. Staffers tried to calm startled guests, but it was too late. The scene had been burned into tape, etched into memory. Unity Night had just transformed into something else entirely, something historic. The real story, though, began with the silence. The East Room buzzed with whispers, shifting footsteps, uneasy glances. For a second, it almost felt like no one dared breathe. The shock wasn't just the words Trump shouted, it was the fact that he'd shouted them in the nation's most symbolic room, live on camera, surrounded by leaders who knew exactly how much weight a moment like this carried. Clinton stood at the podium, hands lightly resting, eyes soft but locked onto Trump. He leaned toward the microphone just enough to pull every gaze back to him. "Mr. President," he said, voice calm, almost gentle, "this room doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the American people. A silence so heavy, it felt like gravity itself had doubled settled across the room. A cameraman slowly lowered his equipment, stunned. Clinton continued, "I was invited here, just like you, to speak about unity. And if unity makes you this uncomfortable, maybe that says more about where we are as a country than anything I could say tonight." Murmurs erupted. Someone whispered, "Wow." Phones lifted quietly as guests began recording. Trump clenched his jaw, lips tightening as he motioned toward an aide to cut the microphone. But the staff hesitated. Silencing a former president on national television was a line no one wanted to cross. Clinton glanced at the crowd, then back at Trump. "You can ask me to leave," he said, the calm in his voice almost disarming. "But you can't erase what needs to be heard." Applause exploded, loud, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. Chairs shifted as people stood. Clinton raised a hand modestly to calm the room, but the applause continued like a wave. "This isn't about you or me," he said gently. "It's about the families watching tonight. Families tired of politics being treated like a grudge match. Families who want hope, not hatred. Progress, not chaos." Trump shifted, furious. The applause grew stronger. Clinton leaned in once more. "History won't remember how loudly we shouted over each other. It will remember whether we chose dignity or destruction." The room fell into reverent silence, and that's where the first true shift in power happened. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how far these stories travel. That single moment, that quiet challenge would shape everything that followed. The applause had barely faded when Trump lurched forward, gripping the edge of the table so tightly the wood creaked under his hands. His face flushed a deeper shade of red, his eyes flicking between the cameras and Clinton like a man desperately trying to regain ground in a battle he never expected to lose. Overshadowed in his own White House, Trump erupted. "You think you're some kind of hero, don't you? You walk in here acting like you've got all the answers. I'm the president, not you." Gasps rippled across the room like shockwaves. Staffers froze. Reporters scribbled furiously. Guests stiffened in their seats. Clinton didn't move at all. His stillness made Trump's outburst feel even louder, even more unhinged. Trump jabbed a trembling finger at him. "You had your time 8 years. And what did we get? A mess. A disaster. And now you stroll back in here like you're the savior of America? Get out!" Trump barked again. "I said get out!" The room tensed. A guest whispered, "This is going too far." Cameras zoomed in on Trump's shaking hand, then drifted toward Clinton, collected, unmoved. Finally, Clinton spoke, the gentle cadence of his voice cutting through the shouting like a calm wind through smoke. "Mr. President, the White House does not belong to you. It belongs to the American people. And they deserve better than what they're witnessing right now." A low murmur spread across the room, a ripple of agreement, of shock, of recognition. Trump spun toward the crowd, arms thrown wide. "See, this? He's trying to humiliate me on national television. It's disgraceful!" A senator stood halfway, unsure whether to intervene. The tension in the room felt like it was vibrating. Trump slammed his hand on the table. "Security! Get him out of here!" Secret Service agents remained motionless. Removing a former president on live national television? That line wasn't just political suicide, it was historic destruction. Everyone felt it. Clinton slowly leaned into the microphone again, his voice steady as stone. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone," he said. "I'm here because the people who invited me believe this country deserves a conversation about dignity, about leadership, about unity." His tone tightened just a fraction. "And if that makes you this uncomfortable, then maybe the question isn't about me." He paused long enough for every breath in the room to freeze. "It's about why the idea of unity threatens you so right." A collective gasp filled the air. Then applause thundered again, louder than before, rising until it swallowed every corner of the room. Trump tried to shout over it, but his voice cracked beneath the overwhelming force of approval. "Sit down!" Trump roared. "Sit down!" Clinton straightened calmly as the applause continued, unfazed by Trump's unraveling composure. Cameras framed the contrast with brutal clarity. Trump red-faced, fuming, flailing. Clinton calm, firm, unbroken. Clinton spoke again, his voice carrying steel beneath the velvet. "Respect isn't demanded," he said. "It's earned. And the American people are watching to see who understands that." The audience erupted again, the energy shifting decisively. Trump shouted through clenched teeth, "This is my presidency. My event. I won't be lectured by you!" Clinton tilted his head slightly, and the expression on his face, pity, compassion, firmness, cut deeper than any insult ever could. "Your presidency," he replied gently, "belongs to the people, not to you." The audience stirred. A few guests leaned forward, recognizing that this wasn't just a disagreement, this was a clash of leadership itself. Trump slammed the table once more, repeating the same brittle command, "Get out." But now it sounded hollow, desperate. A voice finally broke through the tension. A governor rose from the center table and called out firmly, "Let him speak." Others repeated it. More joined in. Within seconds, half the room was chanting, "Let him speak." Their voices flooded the East Room, drowning out Trump's sputtering commands. He froze, stunned, and for a moment, just a moment, he looked small. The cameras zoomed in mercilessly. Trump shouted, "This is my house, mine." But his words dissolved beneath the chant. Clinton stood like a mountain through it all, waiting for the room to settle. When the voices faded, the silence that followed felt immense expectant. Clinton leaned toward the microphone again, voice calm and unshakable. "We stand tonight in the people's house. Not one man's stage, not one party's theater. This house belongs to all Americans, and the people he scanned the room deserve to be heard." Applause erupted again, unified, powerful. Trump waved his arms wildly. "Fake news! They'll twist this! They'll spin it!" A journalist shouted back over the noise. "Mr. President, they don't have to spin anything. It's happening live." Laughter broke sharply through the tension, laughter that stung Trump more deeply than any insult could. Clinton saw the moment shift. "No one came here tonight to watch a shouting match," he said softly. "They came because they believe we can do better, that we can sit at the same table, disagree, and still move forward." He gestured gently toward Trump. "Leadership isn't about who yells the loudest. It's about who guides us with dignity. Anger can command a room, but dignity can change it." That line landed like thunder. Before we continue, if this moment shocked you, type truth in the comments. I read every single one of them. Even skeptics in the room were leaning in now. The shift was unmistakable. Trump paced, fists clenched, muttering to his aides, "This is a setup. They're all against me." But no one was listening to him anymore. The room felt like it had shifted onto a different axis, as if gravity itself leaned toward Clinton and away from Trump. Every camera, every pair of eyes, every ounce of attention had moved, and Trump felt it. He couldn't hide it. He couldn't contain it. He paced like a man cornered, muttering under his breath, shaking his head as if trying to rewrite the moment in real time. But the contrast between them, rage versus restraint, had been broadcast too clearly. Clinton didn't attack. He didn't mock. He simply waited. And somehow, that quietness made everything louder. A reporter finally called out, voice steady, "President Clinton, what do you say to those who believe unity is impossible under this administration?" Clinton didn't hesitate. "Unity is never impossible," he replied. "It's only difficult, and difficult things are always worth fighting for." Applause rolled through the room, measured but strong. Trump muttered something under his breath, but the microphones barely picked it up. No one cared. The nation was watching a moment unfold that felt bigger than politics. Clinton allowed the applause to fade naturally, then continued. "The presidency," he said, voice lower now, "is not a crown. It's a responsibility. And responsibility means hearing things you may not like. A murmur swept the audience. Trump's jaw tightened. It means, Clinton continued, accepting that leadership isn't about always being right. It's about being willing to learn, to listen, to grow. And that can't happen if every criticism is treated like an attack. The East Room went completely still, drawn in by the gravity of the words. Trump slammed his fist on the table. "You're not the president anymore, Bill." Clinton didn't blink. "And yet," he replied softly, "here I am. Because millions of Americans still believe in decency, in dialogue, in dignity." Trump's face darkened. "You think you're better than me? You think you did everything right?" Clinton shook his head gently. "I made mistakes. Many. But leadership isn't measured by whether we make mistakes. It's measured by whether we learn from them." The words landed like stones. "And a nation isn't defined by its disagreements," Clinton added. "It's defined by whether it can rise above them." Trump shot up from his chair so fast, it toppled backward with a heavy thud. "This is over." He shouted, "I'm not letting you stand here and humiliate me." Secret Service didn't move. Aides froze. Cameras captured everything. Clinton leaned into the mic one last time, his voice soft but razor sharp. "With all due respect, Mr. President, the people watching tonight aren't judging me." He paused. "They're judging you." The air was electric, unbearably so. Trump froze, fury twitching in every muscle, searching desperately for a comeback. But none came. Reporters typed furiously. Guests stared in disbelief. Phones recorded every breath. Clinton continued, his tone now impossibly calm. "And tomorrow, the question Americans will ask themselves isn't, 'What did Clinton say?' His gaze locked onto Trump like a pin through fabric. It will be, 'How did Trump react?'" A collective gasp rippled across the room. Trump's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The cameras captured it the moment his voice failed him. Clinton took a sip of water, letting silence do the rest. Then he added the line that detonated across the East Room like a moral bomb. "The presidency is temporary," Clinton said. "Character is permanent." Applause exploded like cannon fire. People stood. Hands pounded the tables. Some guests shouted Clinton's name. Trump's fists clenched at his sides, knuckles pale, searching for control he'd already lost. The East Room no longer felt like Trump's domain, it felt like Clinton's classroom. The applause rolled on, waves upon waves, until Clinton raised a hand gently, inviting silence. He looked directly into the cameras, speaking not just to the room, but to millions of Americans watching, whether live or in clips that would go viral within hours. "Don't let anger be louder than hope," he said. "Don't let fear silence your voice, and never let anyone convince you that decency is weakness." The audience erupted again, louder than before. Even skeptics stood. Even opponents nodded. Trump attempted to bark something, but his words were swallowed by applause and disbelief. For a moment, it felt like the very walls of the White House remembered what leadership used to look like. Politicians leaned to one another, whispering things they would never admit publicly. "He's losing control. He can't win this moment." Clinton just owned the moral ground. The roar continued so long that Clinton simply folded his hands and waited, composed, letting the people choose their own silence. Trump stood there, breathing hard, unable to reclaim the room. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't a confrontation anymore. This was a reckoning. Before we continue, comment your thoughts below. I genuinely read every single one. The room waited. The world watched. And the moment was only growing. The applause faded into a low rumble as people settled back into their seats, but the energy in the room had shifted entirely. It felt heavier now, like something irreversible had just happened. Trump could sense it too. He paced with quick, sharp steps, shaking his head, muttering accusations under his breath. "This is a setup," he snarled. "They're all against me." But the room was no longer looking at him. The crowd's attention clung to Clinton, who waited quietly, hands lightly resting on the podium, breathing steady, composed. A reporter near the front whispered, "This is history. We're watching history." News outlets were already posting clips. Staffers exchanged glances, some anxious, some stunned, some resigned. Everyone realized the night had taken on a life of its own. Clinton glanced around the room, then lifted his microphone slightly. "I want to remind everyone," he said, his tone gentle but firm, "that leadership isn't about controlling every moment. It's about understanding every moment." His eyes moved to Trump. And right now, country is seeing a president who confuses intimidation with leadership. A collective gasp burst from the audience. Trump spun toward the crowd, pointing angrily. "He's disrespecting the office! He's disrespecting me!" A voice from deep in the crowd shouted back, "Respect has to be earned!" The room murmured, agreeing. Clinton stepped forward again, unshaken. "I spent 8 years in that office," he said. "I know the weight of it, the late nights, the responsibility, the burden of making decisions that affect millions of lives." He softened his voice, letting sincerity seep into every syllable. "But you cannot lead a nation if you're ruled by your temper. You cannot unite a country if every criticism sends you into a rage." The East Room went, still, silent, listening. Trump muttered into his mic, "You think you're so perfect?" Clinton shook his head. "No, I never claimed to be perfect. I made mistakes, and I learned from them. That's what leadership requires." His eyes swept across the audience, senators, governors, reporters, students, staff. "And the measure of a nation isn't whether it has disagreements. It's whether it can rise above them." The words echoed off the marble walls like a sermon. Trump suddenly shoved his chair aside, the legs screeching across the floor. "This is over," he shouted. "I won't let you humiliate me. Not here." He gestured wildly to Secret Service, but again no one moved. The moment froze. Clinton didn't raise his voice, didn't step back, didn't react. He simply leaned toward the microphone and spoke one more time, each word landing with surgical precision. "With all due respect, the people watching tonight aren't judging me." He let the silence stretch. "They're judging you." Trump's eyes widened, his face pulsed with frustration, but his voice failed him. The entire East Room watched the president struggle to form a distance. Response, any response, and come up empty. A reporter typed furiously, "This is the moment everything shifts." Clinton continued, his tone now quiet and devastating. "The presidency will pass. It always does. But when it does, character is what remains." One guest whispered, "My God." Another muttered, "He's done." The cameras painted the contrast with brutal clarity. Clinton calm, collected, like a man who carried the weight of history lightly on his shoulders. Trump red-faced, agitated, suffocating under the pressure of losing control in front of the world. Applause broke out again. Louder, stronger, more unified. Trump tried to shout over it. "Fake! It's all fake! They're twisting everything!" A journalist near the front raised his voice. "No twist, Mr. President. It's all live." Laughter cut sharply through the tension, stinging Trump more than any insult. Clinton used the moment. He rested both hands on the podium, straightened his shoulders, and addressed the room and the millions watching. "This country is tired of anger," he said. "Tired of division, tired of shouting. America deserves leaders who can disagree without tearing each other apart." He gestured gently toward Trump. "That is what leadership looks like. Not rage, not insults, not fear." The applause roared again, an earthquake of approval. Even people who came prepared to be neutral were swept up in it. Trump's fists tightened as he muttered, "This is all rigged." A senator whispered to his colleague, "He's unraveling." Clinton let the applause taper naturally, then added, "America isn't built on one man's anger. It's built on the hopes of millions. And no matter how loud the shouting gets, hope will always outlast fear." The room erupted once more, applause rolling like thunder. And for a moment, the entire East Room felt united in something rare: clarity, moral clarity, leadership, clarity. The contrast was undeniable. Clinton didn't need to dominate the room with force. He guided it with dignity, and dignity had won. Trump looked around, frantic, searching for an ally, a voice, a hand, anything but. All he found were cameras documenting his loss of control. Clinton stepped back slowly, composed, waiting for the moment to settle. And then, just as the applause softened, he delivered one more truth. Not loud, not forceful, but devastating in its honesty. We can't heal this nation by shouting at each other. We heal it by remembering that we all serve something bigger than ourselves. The East Room fell silent, reverent, thoughtful, changed. And the confrontation was only deepening. Clinton's final words lingered in the air, echoing across the room with a weight that made even the chandeliers seem to pause their shimmer. The East Room wasn't just silent, it felt frozen. Every guest, every staffer, every senator sat suspended in that stillness. Trump trembled with fury, and that fury finally burst from him like steam from a cracking pipe. "You're all against me!" Trump shouted, pacing wildly. "This whole thing is a setup, a trap. He came here to disrespect me, embarrass me, undermine me. The room didn't react. No one shouted back. No one defended him." For the first time all night, Trump felt alone. He slammed his fist on the table. "I built this country back up, and this is how you treat me?" But the power of his words collapsed under the weight of the moment. Clips were already being uploaded. Staffers were already texting reporters. Social media was detonating. Clinton didn't respond immediately. He just watched, not with superiority, but with a calm sorrow, as if he were witnessing something tragic unfold. Finally, he stepped forward again. "We're not here to tear anyone down," Clinton said quietly. "We're here because Americans deserve honesty, even when in a choir." "It's uncomfortable." Trump snapped around, pointing at Clinton with a shaking finger. "You ruined this country. You left it broken. And now you come in here telling me how to run my presidency?" Clinton shook his head gently. "Strength isn't measured by how loudly we pound the table," he said softly. "It's measured by whether we lift people up or tear them down." The words hit like a hammer. A woman in the audience whispered, "That's leadership." A man near her nodded. "He's saying what we're all thinking." Trump, now desperate, turned back to the crowd. "He's disrespecting the office!" A voice rose from the back. "Respect has to be earned." Trump froze. Clinton stepped closer to the podium, his voice calm, but powerful. "And one friend. I spent 8 years carrying the weight of this office," he said, "and I learned something very simple. You cannot lead a nation if your anger leads you." The room held its breath. Trump muttered loudly, "This is a disgrace." Clinton refused to escalate. Instead, he addressed the crowd and the entire nation watching. "Anger is easy," he said. "Blame is easy. But when the anger fades, what will you have left? What will history remember?" Silence. Deep, heavy, undeniable. Cameras zoomed in on Trump, cornered, exhausted, furious. Then they turned back to Clinton, composed, unwavering. The contrast was unmistakable. A reporter called out, "President Clinton, what would you say to Americans watching this and wondering what hope looks like in moments like these?" Clinton didn't hesitate. "Hope," he said softly, "is choosing dignity when others choose chaos. Hope is standing firm when you're shouted down. Hope is believing that this country is bigger than any one man's ego." The audience erupted again, applause booming, tables shaking. Trump tried to shout over them, "This is fake, fake, all of it." But even his own aides couldn't look at him. Clinton raised a hand gently. "Let me leave you with this," he said. "We don't heal this country by tearing each other apart. We heal it by listening, by learning, by remembering that leadership belongs to the people, not the person who shouts the loudest." The crowd rose to their feet. The applause grew louder. Phones recorded every second. Clinton stepped back slightly, letting the moment breathe. Trump's voice broke as he tried one last desperate attempt. "This is my event. My house." A reporter shot back sharply. "It's the people's house, sir." The laughter that followed cut deeper than any criticism. Clinton took a breath and delivered the line that would echo across the nation for weeks, months, years to come. "I'll leave when I finish speaking," he said. And when history looks back on tonight, it won't ask who shouted, it'll ask who stood with dignity. The applause became deafening, an avalanche of SS, approval shaking the entire room. And as Clinton stepped away from the podium, Trump's own house no longer felt like his. It belonged to the moment, to the message, to the people who witnessed it. Outside the East Room, the reaction was instant. News stations interrupted programming. CNN flashed the headline, "Trump shouts at Clinton, 'Get out!'" Clinton's reply stuns. Room's NBC ran split screens. Fox entered crisis spin mode. Clips exploded across TikTok. Memes spread across Twitter. Students uploaded videos with millions of views. Analysts called it a defining moment in modern politics. Clinton didn't just win the room, one commentator said. He won the narrative. Strategists on both sides scrambled. Republicans feared the optics. Democrats capitalized immediately. Fundraising emails went out with Clinton's lines printed on shirts. Even comedians were preparing monologues for late-night shows. SNL writers were cutting skits before the event even ended. Everywhere from living rooms to offices to churches, people debated what they'd seen. And no matter which side they favored, most agreed on one thing. Character had stood toe-to-toe with chaos, and character had won. Clinton, meanwhile, didn't celebrate. He didn't grandstand. He simply shook hands, nodded politely, and walked out. Before leaving, he made one brief comment to a reporter. "I said what I needed to say. Now, it's up to the American people." By midnight, his words had gone viral. By morning, they were on billboards. By noon, they were political ammunition. By evening, they were history. A civil rights leader said, "This wasn't a speech, it was a verdict." Historians noted that the moment would likely define Clinton's post-presidency legacy. But beyond all political spin, beyond rallies and late-night jokes, beyond hashtags and viral edits, the story had become something else. A lesson, a mirror, a reminder that real leadership doesn't shout, it stands. And in the East Room, millions of Americans saw the difference. The days following the confrontation sent shockwaves far beyond the White House. It wasn't just a political moment, it was a cultural moment. Something raw and revealing had unfolded in front of millions, and people felt it. Newsrooms buzzed like they hadn't buzzed in years. Clips replayed nonstop. Panels argued across networks. Columnists typed frantically. Social feeds surged, with reactions from every corner of the country. Headlines stacked up. Clinton's calm overshadows Trump's fury. A nation watches character face chaos. The East Room moment that changed everything. Trump's allies tried desperately to spin the narrative. He was ambushed, one claimed. He was provoked, said another. Clinton disrespected the presidency, another insisted. But their voices were drowned out by the viral tidal wave. The sentence Clinton delivered, "Character is permanent," appeared on murals, posters, memes, t-shirts. People repeated his lines on TikTok. Podcasts analyzed every word. Students debated it in classrooms. Pastors referenced it in sermons. Political analysts called Clinton's steady demeanor rope-a-dope. He didn't fight Trump's fire with fire. He let Trump burn himself out. Trump couldn't stay silent. He held rallies, bellowed into microphones, ranted about betrayal and fake news. But clips from the East Room made these outbursts seem even more desperate. One late-night host joked, "It was the first time Americans actually wanted a political speech to continue." Even international leaders chimed in. Some applauded Clinton's composure. Others pointed out the deep division the moment revealed. In kitchens, barbershops, taxis, and break rooms, people argued not just about Trump or Clinton, but about leadership, temperament, and what America needed next. Even those who weren't political felt the gravity of the moment. One teacher wrote online, "My students were silent for 10 full minutes after watching the clip. They said it was the first time they realized how big leadership really is." Parents discussed it with their kids. Veterans debated it at the VFW hall. Communities reflected on what it meant for the country. The narrative became bigger than two men. It became a mirror held up to the nation. Political strategists took notice as polls shifted sharply. Independents, long weary of constant conflict, swung significantly. The contrast between Clinton's calm and Trump's rage hit deeper than anyone expected. One strategist whispered privately, "You can't outspin dignity." Meanwhile, Clinton remained silent. No interviews, no speeches, no victory laps. He understood something timeless. Silence amplifies truth. But Trump couldn't rest. His team released edited clips, distorted audio, crafted counter-narratives, but fact-checkers debunked them within hours. The more he fought, the more he lost ground. For millions, the East Room confrontation served as a lesson that true power doesn't shout, it stands steady. The story spread across America like a quiet revelation. Families asked themselves, what does leadership look like? What kind of voice do we want guiding us? What matters more, volume or character? And slowly, the country began to answer. Weeks later, a historian put it perfectly. Leadership moments are rarely planned. They are revealed. And in that room, we saw two kinds of leadership collide, and only one stood tall. As for Trump, rallies grew louder but thinner. His anger, once a rallying cry, now echoed differently across the nation. More hollow, more frantic. Clinton's moment in the East Room, meanwhile, grew into something almost mythic. People quoted him. Teachers used his lines in classrooms. Protesters painted his words on signs. Commentators replayed the moment when Clinton simply stood still, and in doing so, shifted the entire atmosphere. It was no longer about who was president. It was about what presidency should look like. Even critics admitted, sometimes reluctantly, that Clinton had shown something rare, a snapshot of composure under fire, the kind of steadiness a nation remembers. The East Room confrontation became a touchstone for conversations about leadership for years to come. And as the moment continued echoing across America, across debates, across living rooms, across timelines, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a clash, it was a lesson. One people would revisit every time they asked themselves what kind of country they wanted to build. In the end, the final question wasn't who shouted the loudest, it was who stood with dignity. And that's the question history would ask. Again and again. Thank you so much for watching this story and staying with us until the end. Moments like this remind us why leadership, real leadership, matters. If this story moved you or made you think differently about the power of character, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread this story with someone who needs to hear it. Your voice matters more than you know.